Hey, I've been getting some questions about macros, so I wanted to give you a little tutorial. What are macros and how can I use macro counting to improve my nutrition? So no matter what nutrition plan you're on, you're going to be eating macros. Macros is just a shortened form of the word macronutrient, and that includes proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. And so other people would say that alcohol is a fourth macro because alcohol is processed differently than any of the three previous macros. So if alcohol is part of your nutrition, then that would be a fourth macro. So let's talk a little bit about what each macro does within your body. So first of all, let's talk about protein. Now, protein is a building block of your body. It's composed of amino acids, 8 of which are essential and 11 that are non-essential. So if you're a vegetarian, in order to get your protein requirements, you're going to have to combine foods so that you get those essential amino acids paired up. So rice and beans, for example, for a vegetarian would give you that complete essential amino acid profile. Now, food source proteins take about 2 hours to digest, and all sources of protein are basically 4 calories per gram of protein. Now, fun fact about protein is that it helps to stabilize blood sugar, and an active person needs about 0.7 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. That's probably a good ballpark of how much protein that you need. I find that the majority of women tend to have a lower protein intake, and protein for me is the secret sauce to helping women get and stay lean and to put the sexy in your genes. So let's not discount quality protein sources. Now, the next macro includes fats. Now, there's saturated fats, which are solid at room temperature, like butter and shortening and animal fat. There's monounsaturated fats, which are liquids like vegetable oils, olive oils. There's polyunsaturated fats, which are flax oil, fish oils, etc. And then there's trans fats, which are altered vegetable fats through hydration. And we want to try and stay away from trans fats because our body does not even know what trans fats are, and our body creates inflammation around when we ingest trans fats. Our body is like, whoa, I don't know what that is. And in an effort to protect itself, it creates inflammation. So we don't want any trans fats. There's essential fatty acids, and they cannot be produced in the body, and they are required for optimum health and weight management and body function. And women, if your hormones are amok, it could possibly be because your fat intake is all messed up. Back in the 90s, there was this low-fat fad, and guess what? Diabetes shot up because we were all eating way too much carbs, and there was issues with that low-fat diet. Now, fat is very satiating, so if you eat fat, it helps to keep you full. In fact, any kind of fat you ingest takes 3 to 5 hours to digest, and there's 9 calories per gram, so double what's in protein and carbohydrates. A fun fact about fats is that combining fats and carbohydrates together is the recipe for belly fat. So we want to try and, oh, there's a wasp. We want to try and stay away from fats and carbohydrates exclusively. So the fun foods like cheese and crackers and potato chips, donuts, deep fried foods, they're a recipe for belly fat. So those are the things that we probably want to avoid on a regular basis. Most of us have our omega-6 requirements taken care of, but we are lower on omega-3s. So if we're going to supplement, I highly recommend a quality omega-3 fat source. And the keto diet, which is a high-fat diet, this is interesting. It was first created to control epileptic seizures, And the side effect of that was weight loss. So while I don't believe in the keto diet, there are some people that are very strong supporters of the keto diet. Everybody has to find out what works for them. I'm not a fan, but I find it interesting that its original reason that it became popular was because weight loss was happened when controlling epileptic seizures. So let's talk about carbohydrates. That's the third macro. It's our primary energy source, and our brain needs carbohydrates. I've done all kinds of nutrition plans, mostly so that I could experiment and see what it felt like. I did a keto diet back when it was called the Dr. Atkins diet, and I'm telling you, I felt so dumb because I needed ketones for ketones can get, and protein can get converted to carbohydrates and used as energy for your brain, but it takes a little bit of time. And for me, I just felt dumb when I was on a ketogenic diet. So our brain primarily uses carbohydrates for energy. Now, carbohydrates are protein sparing, and what happens is when our body doesn't have enough energy, our body will catabolize our muscle and use that as energy. So carbohydrates are protein sparing. Now, the whole idea is that simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates, they're all a form of sugar, and they're all broken down. It's just the speed at which they're broken down. So simple carbohydrates, say like jelly beans, they are broken down and pumped into the blood very quickly. And complex carbohydrates, say like quinoa, that would take a longer time. Plus it's got protein in it, so it's again broken down more slowly. And hey Jude, and hey Perry, good to see you. And but the idea is that they're all broken down into sugar. And what happens, so all carbohydrates are sugar of some sort. So all carbohydrates will elicit an insulin response. And different carbohydrates digest at different rates depending on how complex or how simple they are. So there's something called insulin resistance, and that's when our body does not, when we ingest carbohydrates, our insulin, we are not as responsive with insulin. And so some of the symptoms of insulin resistance can actually mimic menopause, like brain fog and, lethargy and weight gain and difficulty losing weight. Hey, Deanna. And so we have to really pay attention to our ingestion of carbohydrates and our insulin response. So as a general rule, if we keep our starchy carbohydrates, if we ingest those earlier in the day, that's when our body is more sensitive and will be able to handle those carbohydrates more effectively than if we were going to have like 3 pieces of bread or a bowl full of rice just before bed when our insulin resistance is a little bit higher. So as a general rule of thumb, if we're having our carbohydrates, our starchy carbohydrates earlier in the day and more fibrous vegetable carbohydrates later in the day, that's really going to help our insulin sensitivity. Now, some fun facts about carbohydrates is for every gram of carbohydrate that you ingest, your body needs 3 to 4 grams of water to either process it or it holds on to that. So if you've just had a treat meal, the next day it might seem like, oh my gosh, I've just gained 3 pounds. Well, you haven't gained 3 pounds of fat. You're just holding on to a little bit more water because it takes some water to process those carbohydrates. On the flip side of that, if you're on a ketogenic diet, in that first week, it may seem like because your carbohydrate intake is so low that, oh my gosh, I've lost 10 pounds. But you haven't actually lost 10 pounds of fat. You've lost 10 pounds of water because your body doesn't need to hold on to that water to process the carbohydrates. So just a couple bits of information regarding carbohydrates there. And like I said, I am not a huge fan of any nutrition plan that cuts out any of the macros because I don't feel that it's sustainable. those people that are on a ketogenic diet, okay, let's look at this. The best diet is the one that fits with you, unless of course it's like the donut diet. I like donuts, or the bagel diet. I'm just going to keep eating bagels. Well, that's probably not going to be nutritionally sound. But the best diet for you is the nutritionally sound diet that fits with your lifestyle. So I don't want to bash the keto diet, because some people have a natural preference for more fatty foods and protein. And if you're not a protein or a carb person, that might be the best one for you, and it fits with your lifestyle and it fits with your preferences. That's great. I find that women tend to like carbs a little bit more. So for women to do a ketogenic diet, it may work, but it may be a stretch, and it might not be sustainable for a lifetime. So my best diet is never go on a diet, and just clean up your eating habits so that you know what foods to eat. Now I want to have a quick little chat about insulin, because insulin is really important in one of the hormones that we balance as we're, women over 40. A lot of women think, oh, it's just menopause that's causing me to have this menopause belly. But I mentioned before that we have insulin resist. A lot of women have insulin resistance, which can mimic the symptoms of menopause. So once we get our insulin and cortisol levels balanced, then we tend to lose some of our belly fat. So just as a reminder, when we ingest carbohydrates, then when we ingest carbohydrates, our blood sugar goes up. Our body likes homeostasis. And so in an effort to keep things the same, our body will release insulin to lower the blood sugar. So now insulin enables our body to use those carbohydrates in 3 ways. We could be using it as an immediate energy source. We could be storing those, the carbohydrates in muscle as glycogen for energy to be used later. Or, and this happens when we have excess, is that could just be stored for a rainy day. So it could just be stored as body fat. So like I said, fats and carbohydrates together, they're the perfect recipe for putting on that belly fat. So now what we want to do is we want to avoid the insulin spikes. We don't want to have the high peaks and valleys. So the best thing to do is to combine our foods so that we're having carbohydrates with a bit of protein, or carbohydrates with protein and fat, so that when we have carbohydrates, because we have protein and fat in our belly, it takes a bit longer for that carbohydrate to be turned into blood sugar, so we don't have the huge insulin spike. Because if we were to sit and eat a pound of jelly beans, what would happen is we get a huge insulin spike, and insulin is very effective at lowering blood sugar. It actually brings it back down and lower to than what we were before. So you might notice that if you have something really high carb, that an hour later it's like, oh, I'm looking for more carbs because my energy is slumping. So you might feel you need more carbohydrates or maybe caffeine. So if we're having a bit of protein and fat with our carbs, we have more of a rolling hill of that insulin spike, so that we control our energy levels as well. So that's another reason why we don't want to have that huge insulin spike. Remember, we can never be losing fat in the presence of insulin, because insulin will be taking that energy that we've just eaten and processing it. Okay, so one time that you might want to include carbohydrates, or a good time to have an insulin spike, not a huge spike, but to have insulin, is after a workout, because our cells become very permeable. And so the carbohydrates and the protein that we intake, because you know how a lot of people say, well, I'm going to have a shake after I work out. Great thing to have in a shake is a high quality protein, and even a liquid carb like coconut water, because our cells are quite permeable, and that way we get the carbohydrate and the protein into the muscles for recovery, replenishment, and muscle building. And remember, the muscle that we're building is putting the sexy in our genes. So that's just a little bit about macros for you. I've been getting a lot of questions about it. Now, there's a variety of ways to figure out your macros. I'm a big fan of MyFitnessPal. I just did another video on MyFitnessPal. It's my favorite app, and I actually log my food, and all my nutrition clients, all Coach Katie and Coach Perry's clients, we encourage you to use MyFitnessPal. However, my issue with MyFitnessPal is I do not like the macros that MyFitnessPal will choose for you, so I don't pay attention to that, and I don't want to, slam any other businesses, but I'm not a fan of If It Fits Your Macros. That's another place that you can, find out what macros are good for you, because they tend to be templated, and there's a lot of things that you need to take into effect when you're figuring out your macros. So activity level, age, weight, height, gender, and things like lifestyle, like are you a shift worker, genetics, what are your stressors, what are your sleep patterns. So there's a lot of things that can factor into what your macros should be. So if you're interested more about macros, Coach Coach Carrie, got it wrong, Coach Perry, Coach Katie, and I are happy to help you with that, because I find whether it's the last 10 pounds that you have to lose or the first 10 pounds that you have to lose, the thing I like about understanding macros is it really helps you understand food, and it's a lifestyle skill that at first you might be measuring your food a little bit, but then you get to understand, okay, what does my body need? Why does it need it? And then you reach a goal and you can sustain that goal without ever feeling like you're going on a diet. Oh, and a fun fact about nutrition, I just took another nutrition cert, and I love it. Jason Phillips, nutrition coaching specialist, awesome nutrition course. And, a majority of women over 40 have a very troubled metabolism from continual dieting, yo-yoing, and it's just a wrecked metabolism. So part of counting macros is providing the right macronutrients to heal the body, because once we heal our body, weight loss happens. It's just a happy coincidence. Rather than going on a diet to lose weight, let's go on a diet or a nutrition plan to heal our body, and weight loss is going to be a natural result of that. And the other thing that I love, and I've mentioned this before, is once I started counting macros, my goal in the beginning was to actually increase my macros. So it turned out that I started counting my macros, eating the right numbers, and I increased the amount of food and quality of food that I was eating, and losing weight. So that seems like win-win, to be eating more, feeling more energy, and dropping pounds and belly fat. So that's my little tutorial on macros. If you have any questions, then definitely let us know. I will post a link if you would like more information. I'll have a questionnaire that I'd love for you to fill in. I'd love to talk to you to help you figure out the exact macros that's right for you. Yes, it is a bit of effort at first, but guess what? If you've tried everything else and it hasn't worked, like, why are you trying the same thing and expecting different results? The best thing to do is to educate yourself. And honestly, I'm not really that smart. You're probably smarter than me anyway, but I just happen to be studying this. And so I can help you to, if I can learn it, you certainly can learn it. You just need some direction in getting started. So have an awesome day. And like I said, if you need some help with those macros or questions, make sure to post, and I'm here for you.